Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I like to pick up on something said by a fishing merchant about Brexit in a newspaper article which shows that as much as many now realise that Brexit is damaging them and that they regret voting to leave the EU, many still don't really get the main problems with Brexit. And this is important because it will prevent people demanding better of our government. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So first things first, normally I would be discussing yesterday's PMQs in this slot. I will be doing that in the second slot. It's linked to something where I had to wait a little bit longer to see what was going to happen in a certain vote in Parliament. But that will be coming next. But in this particular one, so there was this article, which I'll link in the description below, of course, and it's the sort of thing I find most maddening with Brexit. You've got a group of people in the fishing industry who supported Brexit. The fishing industry famously was quite pro-Brexit. Sounded silly, there it was. They supported the lies. They didn't know they were lies, but they supported them. They've now seen that it wasn't what they were sold. And the implication is that even, they might accept that they were lied to. Not just that Brexit wasn't what they'd hoped for, but that they were actively lied to, because that's quite important. Not this, Brexit would have been fine, but Boris Johnson cocked it up. No, actually stating, yeah, it was nonsense from the start, wasn't it? We see that now. But too many still don't understand. One of the guys interviewed, was very illuminating, said they said they'd wished they'd not voted to leave. Okay, a lot are doing that now. They said they'd met Boris Johnson, who just talked about, all this extra staff you're going to have to hire for all the new business you're going to be doing. But all he found were extra costs. And he said that he was disappointed that the Prime Minister didn't mention the extra costs. And this is the first thing I need to pick on here. He was disappointed that the Prime Minister didn't mention the extra costs of doing business after Brexit. My first thought at this point was, why would this fishing merchant expect to be told how his business will change by someone who has never worked a single day in the fishing industry? Why would Boris Johnson, a man who has never had anything whatsoever to do with any business, be the one to tell an experienced fishing merchant how Brexit would impact his business? Shouldn't he have found out for himself? And I don't mean this to be an attack on the merchant in question. He's been brave enough to be interviewed, national newspaper, on what must be a very sore topic for him. But it goes to the heart of where we're going wrong in this country, because this will be the same for anyone. Someone experienced in an industry thought that the Prime Minister, a position that needs no formal qualification or experience, I'd love to be able to sit down with these people and say, I could say to this fishing merchant, right, sit him down and say, you could be Prime Minister in 6 months' time. Not likely, but the path is there. Stand in a by-election, become an MP. Boris Johnson faces a vote of no confidence, loses it. 320 odd MPs decide that you should be the Prime Minister. You are Prime Minister. I would ask him, what do you know about running healthcare? Nothing. It's a fishing merchant. But you will be running healthcare. What do you know about international diplomacy? Nothing. But you're going to be running international diplomacy. The Prime Minister runs everything, but knows nothing. And all the Prime Minister, they don't need any qualifications. They don't need any experience. All they need is the ability to look plausible on the telly, and that's it. They can't tell you more about your own business than you know. I wouldn't think an MP who came from a background in journalism would know more than me about teaching, or more about medicine than a doctor. So why would he know more about selling fish than an actual fish merchant? Until we start to realise that politicians, even the good ones, are rarely experts in the field they are forming policy on, then we will keep giving too much trust to chancellors like Johnson. We need to understand these people are not experts. But okay, I got past that bit. Took me a while, but I got past it. Then he was bemoaning the latest aggro over the French fishing licences. He said they'd never had any problems before Brexit. He admitted that he'd had the mickey taken out of him for falling for Brexit and the lie about free trade. Okay, millions of others were taken in as well. Not in anyone's interest to give him a hard time when he is suffering from the effects of his naivety and, more importantly, is realising the consequences of his actions and is facing up to them. Like I say, courageous to publicly come to terms with that. That's the problem at the moment. There's too many people who will just refuse to accept the damage that Brexit is doing because it's too much of a hit to your ego. It takes a lot for someone to stand up and go, do you know what, I got that. Because this isn't like getting something wrong with minor consequences. This is huge, huge consequences. You know, I wish others could do that as well. He said sales are down, costs are up, and it's all down to leaving the EU. Correct. But then the next bit floored me a little bit. Bear in mind, this was while the French fishing row was going on, before Johnson and the Jersey authorities backed down completely. He said the UK should toughen up its stance towards France. Now, he'd already said that he had no issues with the French fishermen before Brexit. He said they were absolutely fine. There were no frictions or anything like that. So this wasn't xenophobic antipathy at play here. His reasoning was that we should make it as difficult for them as they do for us. Now, the logic is there, isn't it? It's like, okay, we're having these trade barriers threatened or applied against us. Why don't we do the same to them and then we'll both agree to lower them down? That's his thinking. Fine, perfect logic. But this is where my heart sank, because even this guy who has now seen the Brexit damage and regrets it wants us to act in a way that only makes Brexit worse, not better. It's like he's learned nothing. Like I said, what he's thinking is not stupid. There is a logic there. But what he's saying is we should make it tougher for the EU to bring food to Britain. That we should put tariffs on them, he said. And others did in the article as well. And this is why I really wish I could sit down with some people like this. Unfortunately, you'd need to sit down with millions of people like this. You know, I wondered why the journalist who interviewed him didn't point a few things out, for example. I'd have pointed out that we don't even carry out customs and SPS checks on the food coming in from the EU. I'd ask him why he thinks this is. Is he even aware of it? The reason, of course, is that we cannot apply checks to those goods because we don't have the staff, we don't have the facilities, and we don't have the systems to manage it. It would lead to a massive reduction in imports from the EU. Good, the merchants and other like-minded people may think. Is it? If it's good, think why this extreme Tory Brexit government isn't doing it. They're not refusing to apply these checks out of familial love for the EU. They hate the EU, remember? So why are they doing it? They're doing it because the food shortages that we're already experiencing would be made massively worse. There'd be no change in your shopping list and just paying higher food prices, but unless you're on a budget, you know, still coming out with the food you need, there would be real shortages for everyone, even those who can afford the higher prices. We cannot make it difficult for the EU to export their stuff to us because we are desperate for those goods, especially food and medicines. To say nothing of chemicals needed to treat our water, as was illustrated so graphically recently. I would ask him how a country that is so desperate for EU imports of food that it refused to carry out border checks on consignment would apply tariffs to those goods and get some benefit from it. I'd ask him if he knew what the consequences of those tariffs would be. Because let's just pretend that we could apply those tariffs. Not immediately obvious to me how you do it effectively when the paperwork isn't even being checked, but let's just say the government applied tariffs to these things, right? Tariffs are paid by importers, not exporters. So it's not a higher price on the EU exporters. The reason tariffs are normally a problem for the exporters is because the goods then become more expensive for the intended customers. Because they have to pay the price for the goods. Okay, I'm happy paying the price for the goods. Including transport, yeah, I'm okay with that. Plus this import tax as well. Oh, well, all of a sudden now it's becoming quite expensive. So there's a danger the customer will just get their goods elsewhere, where it's cheaper. But that's not what would happen here, because we are desperate for that food. So what we would do is just pay the import taxes on it, and that's we, us, people in Britain. All tariffs on EU food, all it would do is make our food even more expensive because there's nowhere else for us to get it from. The stuff we import from the EU, there is nowhere else. rising food costs are already partly responsible for the massively increasing rate of inflation this year. This would just hit the pockets of ordinary British workers, like the fish merchant arguing for it, for example. And worse for those on the lowest incomes who will be pushed further into starvation. It's this notion that the trade barriers that Brexit has erected with the EU can be two-way that is at the heart of the public's failure to force the government to act properly. What this fish merchant is literally doing is saying, Brexit is deeply damaging, I see that now, I wish we had never done it. But given that we have done it, we should double down on the crazy. Even people who now see Brexit as being damaging, instead of arguing to go, okay, what we actually need to do is go back to alignment with the EU, tear those trade barriers down, this guy at least is arguing for us to raise those trade barriers higher. You know, in an ill-advised arms war against an opponent that's way larger than we are. And my worry is that this is not unique thinking. In fact, I know it's not unique thinking because a second person in the article said basically the same thing. I don't even think it's uncommon thinking. And we need to be wary when considering the increasing numbers of people that are realising that Brexit was a mistake. It's going up all the time. And more will come to realise it in time. But the answer may be obvious to some of us. Reverse it. That's the obvious thing, isn't it? Reverse it then. You've gone the wrong way. Turn around. Go back along exactly the same path in the opposite direction until we are back where we were. Not an option. Two reasons, really. One, we've burnt the bridges on that path. And there are people who regret the decision but don't agree on the best way forward. Many people, like these people in the article, do not agree that a 180-degree turn and back the way you came is the best way. The battle isn't just about getting people to see the damage of Brexit, but also to be able to agree the way out of it. Because until you get all of these people, like you have a group of people that regret Brexit, but they think the solution is this. Another group think the solution is this, and so on. All these disparate groups who are working against each other, not against Brexit. You know, the thinking of this fish merchant really illuminating in that regard. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.